The New York Rangers do not trade Vincent Trocheck or Brennan Schneider, and it was probably a mistake.
You're Locked on the New York Rangers, your daily podcast on the New York Rangers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 1,500 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. Just want to thank you guys, as always, for checking out Locked On New York Rangers and obviously making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day, and for making Locked On the number one sports podcast network. So we got a lot to do here for a Ranger team that really did basically a whole bunch of nothing here on trade deadline day. There is still quite a bit to talk about. We are going to be talking about the return that the Rangers got for Sam Carrick. You know, in our most recent episode, we knew that Carrick had been traded. We didn't know what the return package was going to be. We now know they get a third and a sixth from the Buffalo Sabres. It's not completely unacceptable, but I was left feeling a little bit underwhelmed. Going to talk a little bit about that a little bit later in today's episode. We're also obviously going to be celebrating our 1,500th episode here together. Can't thank you guys enough for supporting the show throughout the 7 seasons now that we've been doing this. Brennan Othmann traded to the Calgary Flames. That was some late breaking news. We didn't find out about that until probably about an hour after the trade deadline, maybe even more than that, but we'll have some thoughts on that. Also, a small trade between the Rangers and the Blackhawks involving a couple of AHL players. So again, we've got a lot to do here, but we begin with what I think is the news of the day for the New York Rangers. And that news is basically that there is no news as it pertains to Vincent Trocheck, and to a lesser extent, I would say Brennan Schneider. You know, these were the two guys going into the deadline, once Panarin had been traded, that I think a lot of us looked at and figured that they could be next, and that if they were traded, they could both fetch pretty significant returns. I also can completely acknowledge that there are going to be some Ranger fans out there potentially watching this, listening to this, whatever it might be, that are going to be happy about the fact that both of these players or one or the other is still on the New York Rangers. And I can certainly respect that opinion. And if you're happy about the fact that Trocheck is still here, Schneider is still here, then I'm genuinely happy for you for that. I think Schneider, I'm kind of on the fence. Trocheck, I feel like not trading him was a missed opportunity for this team. But what I will do, quick disclaimer before we really get into it here, I'm going to withhold complete judgment on the Rangers not trading Trocheck, and again, Schneider to a lesser extent, until we find out what kind of offers they really had. You know, for a while, it was looking like Minnesota was going to pick up Vincent Trocheck and, you know, scramble in a first rounder or whatever that package was going to be. But it sounds like it was just a big time staring contest, and that Drury had a set price in mind, a certain expectation that he wanted in a trade of Vincent Trocheck. And because he didn't get it, Vincent Trocheck, at least for the time being, and at least until the offseason, is still a member of the New York Rangers. But just in general, I mean, I feel like this was a clunker of a trade deadline day for the New York Rangers. I mean, you're talking about a team that is dead last in the Eastern Conference. They are fourth to last in the NHL. They've done okay these first 4 games out of the break. There have been some nice moments here and there, and obviously they won this most recent game against Toronto. But for the most part, the past, I mean, what are we talking here now? Like 2.5 months or so have been a complete disaster. They still have not won back-to-back games in the longest time. I think we're talking about since before Christmas, if I'm not mistaken, if I remember the dates correctly. And I mean, that to me sounds like a team that needs to do something on trade deadline day. That to me sounds like a team that needs to rebuild for the future and sell off some of their current players and get as many assets as you possibly can for them. And you play these teams off of each other. And the Raiders were in an advantageous situation, at least in theory, because as we've talked about in this podcast, you know, there's only maybe like 7 or 8 teams going into the deadline this year that you can look at and, like, you know for sure that they're sellers. Whereas buyers, I mean, you got to figure the 16 teams currently in a playoff spot are all open for business, all at least potentially looking to add, plus whatever teams are within striking distance, you know, maybe they want to make a move. And so the Rangers would seem to have all the leverage, and it would stand to reason that they could get a good amount for somebody like Vincent Trocheck or potentially even Brennan Schneider. But obviously that didn't happen, or maybe it did happen, but, you know, Drury didn't think it was a good enough offer. That information, I think, will probably come out in due time. But again, the one blessing here to having a miserable season like this, where everything falls apart and the team is a mess and nothing goes right and you just lose and lose and lose. I guess there's two blessings. One is you should get a high draft pick. And two is that it leaves no doubt about where you stand as an organization. The Rangers aren't some bubble playoff team here. They're not, the Jackets, who are 1 point out of the playoffs. They're not the Kings, who are 3 points out of the playoffs. And, when you get into that in-between territory, you're not really sure, do we buy? Do we sell? Do we stand pat? It's a difficult decision. When you're as hopelessly buried as the Rangers are, I think 19 points out of the playoffs the last time that I checked, then it shouldn't really be that difficult to figure out what you should do. And what you should do is sell at the deadline. Now, they sort of sold at the trade deadline. They made a couple of moves leading into this year's deadline, which is now, of course, come and gone. You got Carson Soucy. You trade him for a third rounder. You got Panarin. Obviously, you trade him for a conditional third, which will probably remain a third and not become a second, and Liam Greentree. And one piece of good news there, Liam Greentree is on an absolute heater right now. I saw something where he's got like 16 points in his last 7 games or something ridiculous like that. And I understand junior hockey is not the same as the NHL, but that's still incredible production. You traded Sam Carrick last night. You get a third and a sixth. It's acceptable. Again, we'll elaborate on Carrick a little bit later in today's episode. And then, of course, this trade of Brennan Othmann, but that doesn't really fit the criteria of a rebuild either. They trade Othmann for another prospect and somebody who's not yet made his NHL debut. And we'll talk about that a little bit later, too. But I don't know, man. Those are moves. You get something in exchange for these players. But does that really sound like the work of a team that is truly rebuilding or even retooling? And the Rangers can use whatever word they want to use. They can brand it however they want to brand it. But it's just crazy to think to me that, the Rangers, and again, I know we've talked about this quite a bit on this podcast, but nevertheless, you got to remember this team was just 2 years ago, 2 wins away from the Stanley Cup final, the best record in the NHL. And coming off of a season like that, that's when Drury decided that he wanted to basically just drop an atomic bomb on this roster and blow everything up and trade all these guys away and make all these wholesale changes. And he's made a lot of moves over the past couple of years, right? And now we get to the trade deadline in their second straight completely lost season. They're even more hopelessly buried in the standings this year than last year. At least last year, they were kind of within striking distance. But now he wants to play it conservative. Now he wants to maybe we'll hang on to these guys. How does that make any sense? You're hanging on to players of a team that is last in the conference, yet 2 years ago, when everything was good and we were having fun and watching all these dramatic playoff wins, after that season ended, after that run concluded, that's when Drury decided, all right, trade everybody, waive everybody, do all this stuff, right? So how does that make any sense? Now, again, it's at least possible, like we've acknowledged, on this episode and really even leading into the deadline, it's possible that he just didn't get an offer to his liking for any of these players. And maybe the offers were so insulting that he figured he would just hang on to both of these players. And if that really is the case, and again, I do think this information will come out in due time, then maybe we'll cut Drury just a little bit of slack. We don't do it very often on here. I think Ranger fans in general don't do it very often. The fire Drury chants are loud and clear at every Ranger home game. And I'm going on Tuesday. And I think there's a decent chance that those might be out in full force once again. We'll see. But this to me was not a good day for the New York Rangers. I think that with Vincent Trocheck, you had to strike while the iron is hot. You're talking about somebody here who is a great player. He really is. He's a Swiss Army knife. I was thrilled when the Rangers signed him in free agency a couple of years ago. I know a lot of you were as well, and he's been a great Ranger, but his value will never be higher. He will be 33 years old before next season. He no longer has Artemi Panarin to play on his line. So barring something completely unexpected, you're going to see Vincent Trocheck's offensive numbers begin to decrease moving forward. And I know there's going to be a lot of people that say, well, you can just trade Vincent Trocheck in the offseason. And yes, you could do that. That very well could still happen. But to me, you've lost your leverage because once you get to the offseason, the whole buyer-seller dynamic that we were talking about just a couple of minutes ago, that goes away. Everybody's a buyer and everybody's a seller in the offseason because you're not in the middle of a season where the type of team that you are has been established. Teams like the Rangers and Flames and the Canucks, they're bad teams, and they should be selling at the trade deadline. Teams like, Vegas and Colorado and the Canes, they're good teams. They should be buying at the trade deadline. In the offseason, anybody can do anything. That dynamic goes away. And instead of being in a situation that the Rangers are in right now, where they're one of the very, very, very few sellers in the league, Now everything kind of balances out. There's other players that are available. Vincent Trocheck might not necessarily still be the top dog as far as guys that can be had in a trade. So teams have more options. All the leverage, not all the leverage, but a good amount of the leverage goes away if you're the New York Rangers and you're waiting until the offseason to trade Vincent Trocheck. And let me also ask what I think is a perfectly reasonable question here. What was the point of sending out the letter 2.0 if you weren't really going to do that much in the trade deadline season anyway, other than to just voluntarily give away leverage? You know, I understand the Rangers sending out that letter and wanting to be a little bit transparent about the future of this team. Okay, fine, but you're also telegraphing your next moves to the rest of the league. So teams now know that the Rangers are going to be open for business. And maybe that's why the offers for Vincent Trocheck weren't to Chris Drury's liking, weren't to the New York Rangers' liking today, because, okay, they're going to sell. So we already know they're selling. You know, this is the viewpoint from other teams. We already know that the Rangers are selling. So let's not offer them too much for Vincent Trocheck. Eventually they'll bite. And on one hand, look, if he truly was underwhelmed by all these offers and all these offers were terrible, then again, we'll cut him a bit of slack for hanging on to Vincent Trocheck. But I just think this whole thing was played poorly. And I don't think the letter really did anybody any favors either. So, I mean, again, you look at what the Rangers did. We went through the moves earlier. They traded their 2 impending UFAs, Panarin and Susie, and they traded their 4th-line center, and they traded their own former first-round pick, who obviously has not worked out. I mean, again, does that sound like a team that's retooling, rebranding, anything? You know, not to me. Maybe it's time for a retool of the front office. What do you guys think about that? Let me know in the comments section. And again, look, I mean, hey, there might be some people that are happy about Vincent Trocheck sticking around. I mean, hey, he's a great player. Maybe things can turn around for this Ranger team quicker than some of us expect. I mean, I don't see a whole bunch of tangible reasons to expect that. We know playoffs aren't happening this season. Playoffs next season doesn't seem very likely either. I mean, we don't know exactly what the roster is going to look like. And, you know, granted, there is parity in this league, but there's nothing to really look at with the Rangers and say, like, okay, I think they're going to put the pieces back together very quickly here. And if you're not going to be able to do that, then hanging on to Vincent Trocheck through the end of his deal it just begins to make less sense. And again, I think that it was a mistake not moving him. Now with Schneider, we've talked about him off and on here too to kick off the episode here today. You know, we've been saying all along on here that with Schneider, it really depends on the return. And again, I really am curious to find out what kind of offers the Rangers got for Schneider or Trocheck. But we actually got our first clue that Braden Schneider might not be traded based on what happened last night against the Toronto Maple Leafs. The very simple fact that Braden Schneider played in that game, that was at least a little bit of a hint, a little bit of an indicator that maybe he's not on the trading block as much as we have been led to believe that he is. I mean, his name was coming up a lot in trade rumors for a while there. And the last week or so, it's died down a little bit. And man, I didn't hear a peep on Braden Schneider today. I mean, you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but I didn't see a single Ranger beat writer mention him. I didn't see a single NHL media member talking about Braden Schneider at all. Doesn't mean there weren't conversations behind the scenes and everybody was just kind of keeping their cards close to the vest. But, you know, obviously it feels like any talks of trading Braden Schneider really kind of cooled off in the last couple of days here. And look, with Schneider, again, it depends on the return, at least for me. And I realize that in some ways, all trades do come down to the return, and I get that too. But Schneider is only 24 years old, and this is why I'm a little bit more open to him not being traded than Vincent Trocheck not being traded. Schneider is only 24, and he's young enough that he could see the other side of this rebuild. Whereas with Vincent Trocheck, I don't think it's going to happen. Trocheck's got 3 years left on his deal. He's at a great price, and that's all well and good. But he'll be 36 when this contract ends. I don't think the Rangers are going to extend him at that point. And I just don't know that the Rangers can turn things around that quickly. With Braden Schneider, now it's a little bit different because he's an RFA with arbitration rights when this season ends. And the Rangers could re-sign him at a somewhat reasonable price, and he's still only 24 years old. And I mean, the maximum that they even allow now, the maximum amount of years to re-signing one of your own free agents is 7 years. So he's 24. I don't know when he turns 25, but we add 7 to 24. Even if they went the maximum contract, he'd only be 31 when he's a free agent. And if the Rangers can't get things turned around and at least get back to being, you know, a somewhat dangerous contender in 7 years, then, I mean, I don't even know what to say about that, right? This is a league where there is a lot of parity and there is a lot of overturn. And that should be more than enough time, really, for any team to put the pieces back together. By that same token, though, if I was getting a first-round pick in an offer for Brennan Schneider today, I 100% would have done it. I like Schneider a lot. He's done a great job since being called up by the New York Rangers. But I don't think that he's the kind of player that you look at and think that, like, he's completely irreplaceable, right? He's not somebody that I think has, like, a whole bunch of other levels that he needs to get to that he's going to unlock. I think he's somebody who is what he is, and he's somebody that, you know, is versatile. He can play with a bunch of different defense partners. I've always liked that about him. He can play both sides of the ice. That's very nice as well. But he's not somebody that I think is ever really going to become a star player in the league. He's better served on the third pairing, maybe the second pairing. We saw him get a run with Gavrikov on the top pairing when Fox was injured, and it didn't really go that well. So, you know, he is what he is. He's a solid, if unspectacular, defenseman. And again, for me, we got to wait and see what the return packages would have been for Schneider and Vincent Trocheck as well. But man, what a clunker of an NHL trade deadline, not just for the Rangers, but really the entire league as a whole. I mean, as for the Rangers, like, could they not have just, like, flipped one of these veteran players? Could we not have just moved on from Connor Sherry or Urho Vakanainen? I mean, just ship one of them out for a 5th or 6th round pick and just be done with it and just move on with your life. Open up a roster spot for a younger player with more upside. And you've got a late round pick and it's a dart throw, but throw that dart. You know, I'd rather have a dart throw in the 6th round than have another couple, well, I guess just 2 months of Connor Sherry. And it's nothing against him, but he's 33 years old and he's got no future with this Ranger team. It boggles my mind that he's still here. Now, you might hear that and say, well, nobody would give anything to the Rangers for Sherry. Somebody would have given you a 6th or 7th rounder. I would have to believe that, but we just obviously can't do that because Connor Sherry is just so ridiculously good. So in just a minute, we're going to keep everything rolling here. We're going to continue talking about this trade deadline from every conceivable angle. But in just a minute, we're going to really hone in on Sam Carrick. Like I said earlier in today's episode, you know, Carrick, he got traded last night. He was obviously a healthy scratch for the game against the Leafs. And we now know the return package. We didn't know it when we did our last episode. So I'm looking forward to discussing what the Rangers got in exchange for Carrick. To me, I would have liked to have seen him get a little bit more. But we'll break that down in just a second. All right, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by our very good friends at Factor. Cold days, packed schedules, and big goals, that's winter. And when there's not a lot of time to cook, eating well can feel like another thing on the to-do list. That's where Factor comes in. Factor makes healthy eating easy with fully prepared meals designed by dietitians and crafted by chefs, so you can eat well without all the planning, the prepping, or the cooking. Factor meals are always fresh, never frozen, and the best part, they're ready in about 2 minutes. There are no refined sugars, there are no artificial sweeteners, and there are no refined seed oils. They are perfect for busy weeks when you still want meals that support your goals without all the stress. Head to factormeals.com/LockedOnNHL50 off and use code LockedOnNHL50 off to get 50% off and free breakfast for a year. Eat like a pro this month with Factor. New subscribers only, varies by plan. One free breakfast item per box for 1 year while subscription is active. And today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is also brought to you by FanDuel. College basketball is nonstop. Big games, tight spreads, momentum swings every single night. From early tip-offs to late-night West Coast shootouts, there's always action on the board. And now FanDuel is giving you a way to turn that energy into even bigger potential wins with a college basketball parlay profit boost. You can build any college hoops parlay any way you want. Rivalry games, ranked matchups, whatever fits your read. You can mix spreads, totals, and player props to match how you see the slate playing out. Then you can apply the profit boost and instantly bump up the potential payout. Go safe, go bold, ride with the team you've been following all season. It's your parlay, your style, now with more upside behind it. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com. FanDuel, play your game. All right, huge shout out to the everydayers, even more so than usual, for supporting this podcast. Really ups and downs, the thick and thin, everything going on with New York Ranger hockey as we celebrate our 1500th episode here today. And obviously, it's an exciting time because we got that trade deadline that just concluded about 2 hours ago here. And it's a perfect time to join the Everydayer Club for ad-free audio, access to our group chat on Discord, and much, much more. By the way, I am now in the group chat on Discord, so looking forward to talking with a couple of you guys on there as well. Use code DEADLINE ahead of the trade deadline for 1 month free. Join now at LockedOnNYRangers.supercast.com or hit the link in the show notes. For the Everydayers, we're going to be back at it probably on like Saturday night. The Rangers play the Devils at 3 o'clock on Saturday afternoon, and going to be discussing whatever happens there, all the lineup changes and everything else going on after that game concludes. So looking forward to that. But for the time being, let's continue talking about this trade deadline day for the Rangers and more specifically, Sam Carrick. Now, Carrick, it's not exactly hot off the press. This trade obviously went through last night, late last night after the Rangers game. And obviously our first clue was Carrick getting scratched for that game against the Leafs. That kind of let you know that something might be cooking. Carrick was held out of that 6-2 win against the Leafs. And again, by the end of the night last night, and in our last episode, we knew that Sam Carrick was on the move to the Buffalo Sabres, but it took forever, or at least forever in today's day and age, to find out what the return package was going to be for Sam Carrick. We finally got the details. The Rangers are acquiring a 3rd-round pick and a 6th-round pick from the Buffalo Sabres in exchange for Sam Carrick. The 6th-round pick, for what it's worth, originally belonged to the Chicago Blackhawks. So it's the Blackhawks pick as opposed to the Sabres. On the surface, I feel like if you just look at this and you don't compare it to anything else going on around the NHL at this year's trade deadline, other deadlines, whatever it might be, then I think you look at this and you think like that's a pretty fair deal for both sides. I mean, that really does seem very fair, very balanced. You get a 3rd-round pick if you're the Rangers, and it's not like massively important asset, but a 3rd-round pick is nothing to sneeze at either. You get an extra pick next season in exchange for a guy that played a very solid role for you in Sam Carrick. So, and then the 6th-rounder, you get the token late-round throw-in that we see in so many of these trades that happen. But with all that said, that argument about this being enough for Sam Carrick, to me at least, it begins to fall apart a little bit when you start to compare it to some other deals that we saw at this deadline and previous deadlines as well. To begin with, again, this goes back to something we talked about in the previous section. It always felt to me like this would be a seller's market. We don't even really know if it was a buyer's market or a seller's market because nothing happened. It's just a bunch of role players going this way and that way. But, you look at, somebody like Scott Laughton last season, right? And he's a good depth player, no doubt about it, but he's somebody that got traded at last year's deadline from the Flyers to the Leafs. The full deal was Laughton, a 4th-rounder, and a 6th-rounder in exchange for a 1st-rounder and a prospect in Nikita Gorbenkin. And look, I mean, Carrick, a little bit more offense Laughton, a little bit more offense to his game than Sam Carrick. But, I mean, the dude got a 1st-rounder, and a prospect. And we just get a 3rd-rounder and a 6th-rounder for Carrick? I mean, that doesn't really compute, right? Even if you feel like Laughton is the better overall player, it's not by that much of a difference. And so, to me at least, a 2nd-rounder for Carrick, when you compare it to somebody like Scott Laughton in the trade of him last trade deadline, that feels reasonable to me, at least reasonable. We also had Nick Waugh. He got moved as well. And he's got a bit more offense to his game than Carrick does as well. But, I mean, we're talking about somebody here with 186 points in 428 games. He's a depth forward. That's what he is. He's often on the 4th line. He got traded by the Leafs to the Avalanche just a short time ago, I believe within the last 24 hours or so, if I'm not mistaken. And he gets traded in exchange for a conditional 1st-round pick in 2027 or 2028. Now, granted, it's not this year, but it's still a 1st-round pick, and a conditional 5th in 2026. So, again, a depth forward getting a 1st-round pick. And dare I even bring up Tanner Jeannot from a couple of years ago? Now, to be fair, this trade always felt like just a massive outlier, but we're talking about somebody here who's a depth forward. The Predators got Jeannot in exchange for a prospect in Cal Foote, a 1st-rounder and 2nd-rounder in 2024, and a 3rd, 4th, and 5th-rounder in 2023. That is absolutely wild. And again, the reason why I even hesitated to bring that one up a little bit is because that was such an insane overpay, in that trade between Tampa and Nashville that like, it just kind of, it stands on its own, right? It's not really, it doesn't really compute with other trades that we see around the trade deadline. But the bottom line, I just gave you 3 examples. And if these teams can get hauls like this for players that are bottom 6 depth guys at best, then why can't the Rangers just get a second rounder for Carrick? I'm not even saying a first rounder. That would be too much, I feel like. Although, again, you look at some of these previous trades and maybe it's not that much, but the Rangers end up with only a 3rd and a 6th for Carrick. And, to me, it's just not a big enough return. I know some people are going to hear me when I say that, and they're going to say, oh, come on, he's 34 years old. The Rangers are rebuilding. He's a 4th liner. He's got, 2 goals this season? I get it. That's a fair point. But when you start to compare him to some other deals in recent history around the NHL, this feels very underwhelming. But the bottom line, Sam Carrick is on his way, and we're going to wish him well in just a little bit here. But I wanted to throw this out first because he's gone, and you got to replace him in the lineup somehow. I mean, there's only one Connor Sherry. I'm sure Sullivan would clone Sherry if he could, but they can't do that. And I think that the trade of Sam Carrick, this begs for the call-up of Dylan Robrick, because in a perfect world for the Rangers, Dylan Robrick can be a younger and better and more complete version of Sam Carrick. Carrick, obviously, and we're going to talk more about him in just a second, but he's somebody that is not a star player, but very much understands his role as a bottom 6 tough guy. And with Dylan Robrick, it's kind of the same thing. He's known for playing with some intensity and some edge and some bite to his game. He's 21 years old, 6'7", 205 pounds. He is listed as both a center and a left wing. I believe he's mostly played center with the Wolfpack. I would have to double check that, and we'll do that moving forward here as we, reassess how this Ranger team looks after the trade deadline in future episodes. But as far as his background, the Rangers took Robrick in the 6th round at number 178 overall in 2023. And that sort of continued this recent Ranger tradition of drafting big guys late in drafts. And I actually kind of like that strategy because by the time you get to like the 6th and 7th round, it's such a crapshoot and it's such a dart throw that might as well take the big guy, right? I mean, the size isn't going to slump. I mean, who's to say if he'll ever work out in the NHL? But, they've taken Edstrom late, they've taken Rempe late, and now, of course, Dylan Robrick as well. But he's physical. He plays with edge like we were talking about. And he's been able to put up some points with the Hartford Wolfpack. I think maybe a little bit more than perhaps the Rangers were expecting. You look at what he did last year, 20 goals with the Wolfpack in his first season as a pro, mind you, right? And that's on a Wolfpack team that is really offensively challenged this year and was to a similar degree last year as well. But he scored 20 goals, had 14 assists, a total of 34 points in 72 games in, again, what was his rookie season of pro hockey. This season, 9 goals and 12 assists with the Pack, 21 points in 53 games. And before the Wolfpack, he played with the Oshawa Generals of the OHL. His final season there, 26 goals, 46 assists for a total of 72 points in 68 games. And I realize it's the OHL, and that's a heck of a lot different than the NHL. And we cannot expect those kinds of numbers from Dylan Robrick once he makes it to the Rangers. But that's still great production any way you slice it. And he's somebody that very clearly drops the gloves. You can look up on YouTube or hockeyfights.com, whatever it is. His final season in the OHL, he had 101 penalty minutes in 68 games. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think that's a bunch of tripping minors. There's clearly some fights mixed in there for sure, unless this guy's taking like 2 penalties per game, 2 minor penalties per game. But yeah, I mean, again, I think that he's tailor-made to take Sam Carrick's spot. Now, do I think the Rangers are going to do this on Saturday against the Devils? Probably not. I get the feeling they'll let the dust settle a little bit and kind of reconvene and recalibrate a little bit here. But man, within the next 3 games, Dylan Robrick needs to be on this roster. He needs to be getting some time in the NHL. He needs to be establishing himself. You're not going to miss him because, again, he's 6'7", and forget his weight. I had it listed down here somewhere. 205 pounds. So he'll go out there and he'll throw his weight around. And, again, this goes back to what we've been talking about here on Locked On New York Rangers. Make the best of a bad situation. Take advantage, the only way you possibly can, of a team that is fallen light years shy of expectations this season. Let the kids play. Let them have an opportunity. Let them get some seasoning. Even if Dylan Robrick doesn't play well, what do you lose? I mean, I guess you could argue like, well, if you call them up too soon and they play poorly and their head is spinning, then they could lose some confidence. I mean, I guess that's possible, but are we really worried about that? I mean, do you see the Rangers, their track record with developing their prospects? I mean, I say just give them a chance, and on top of that, Robrick is somebody that's just going to go out there and he's going to hit, right? And he's going to play physical hockey and he's going to get in your face. That doesn't require a massive jump from the AHL to the NHL. You can play that style of hockey in both leagues. It's not like this is somebody that the Rangers are looking to be a point per game player and he's going to come up and he won't be able to score or do anything offensively and his confidence is going to be shot. That's not the role that they have in mind for him. They just want him to come up, play some straight line hockey, play physical, get in people's faces, be physically imposing out there. And if you can do that in the AHL, for the most part, you can do that in the NHL. It's still a little bit of a jump up, but that shouldn't be a problem for Dylan Robrick. I mean, he's going to tower over just about any player that he lines up against on the ice, whether it's the AHL or the NHL. So I really look for Robrick to get that call up, and I do hope that happens sooner rather than later. So back to Sam Carrick here, because obviously he's the guy that got traded. Robrick, I do like him as his replacement. But Carrick, I mean, man, what a Ranger this guy was for just a year and a half as a blue shirt in 2 terrible seasons and being now a mid-30s veteran journeyman. It's pretty remarkable that this guy won over the Ranger fan base the way that he did. There's nobody that dislikes Sam Carrick, I don't think. There might be a couple of people. I'm going to check the chat in a minute here as well, because, you guys are talking, and that's obviously awesome to see here. A lot of people, I think, fired up about this trade deadline here today. But, there might be a couple of people that think like, come on, what's the big deal with Sam Carrick? And we acknowledged that a little bit earlier. But nobody dislikes him because he's somebody that goes out there, plays a very simple game, knows who he is as a hockey player. He was signed very unceremoniously to very little fanfare a couple of off seasons ago, 3 years at $1 million a pop, basically signed to be a less expensive Barclay Goodrow. And he's played a physical brand of hockey with this Ranger team. He's killed penalties. He's won faceoffs. He seemed to really embrace his role playing between Adam Edstrom and Matt Rempe. It's very easy to forget about this because it feels like about a million things have happened since those three, constructed the Rangers' fourth line. But that was an early bright spot for this team this season. The Rangers, they got off to an okay start this season. I mean, an okay start. Not a great start, probably not even a good start, but an okay start. And one of the early season highlights was the play of that fourth line. Obviously very physical. 2 of the 3 of them, Rempe and Carrick, more than willing to drop the gloves. It felt like they were always in the offensive zone, just grinding away, wearing guys down, having just solid, steady shifts. There wasn't a ton of offense there, but it's the fourth line, so you don't really expect that anyway. And we're not going to get that anymore, and that's obviously unfortunate. But let me just say, man, I got to wish all the best of luck to Sam Carrick with the Buffalo Sabres. I think that's a good landing spot for Carrick. He gets to be a veteran leader on a mostly otherwise young Sabres team, because even after the Sabres acquired Carrick today, they've only got a total of 4 skaters who are in their 30s. Carrick, obviously, Jason Zucker, Justin Danforth, he's on IR right now, and Luke Shen. And that's it. Everybody else, as far as the skaters and the Sabres are concerned, under 30 years old. And it feels like the Sabres, they're probably going to go back to the playoffs for the first time in forever. Buffalo, that just seems like a fan base that would warm up to a guy like Sam Carrick. And it also reemphasizes the fact, and you guys can let me know how you feel about this as well, that come the NHL playoffs, the Stanley Cup playoffs, in the Eastern Conference at least, I will be pulling for the Buffalo Sabres. Now, granted, that's mostly by default. That's mostly by process of elimination, because the other 7 Eastern Conference teams that are in a playoff spot right now are the Canes, the Lightning, the Red Wings, the Penguins, the Islanders, the Canadiens, and the Bruins. Does anybody feel like rooting for any of those 7 teams? There might be a few. I mean, there can always be some weird allegiances, or, you've got a friend or you're married to somebody that likes this team or likes that team and you tend to pull for them. But for the most part, I think by default, most of us are probably going for the Sabres. And the fact that Carrick's there, I'll certainly be pulling for him as well. So we're going to move on in just a second. We're going to celebrate episode 1500 together. We're also going to get into the trade of Brennan Othmann to the Calgary Flames, and one other trade that the Rangers made today, a swapping of 2 AHL players. But I want to end on a positive note with Sam Carrick for everybody that's kind of bummed about the fact that he was traded late last night. Here's a list of the players that Carrick fought during his 1.5 seasons with the New York Rangers, among others. So you've got Xhekaj, you've got Brendan Dillon, you've got Garnet Hathaway, Keegan Colasar, Marcus Pettersson, Mark Kastelik, Matthew Olivier, and Tom Wilson. I saw this list floating around on social media earlier today. And man, I mean, that's a murderer's row right there. Those are some big time serious heavyweights. And I think just about every single time, if Carrick didn't win the fight, he at least held his own. He battled and was often standing up for teammates or trying to light a fire under his comatose New York Ranger team. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't, but he was always somebody that was willing to go out there and get his hands dirty. And I think the Sabres really got a good one in Sam Carrick late last night. But we're going to keep everything rolling. We're going to shift our attention, like I said, to those other 2 trades that the Rangers made today. We'll have some thoughts on that. We will get to that in just a second. All right, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Indeed. Workplace chaos, deadline stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position you must fill still sitting open. When the pressure's on and you need the right hire, this is a job for sponsored jobs. Indeed, sponsored jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for: skills, experience, location, so you are not just hoping the right candidate randomly stumbles across your job post. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute that I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed sponsored jobs. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. Less stress, less time, more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire. This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. All right, we'll keep everything rolling here on Locked On New York Rangers. And let me just say real quick here, we got a lot of people watching this live. We're up over 100 at this point, and thank you guys so much for tuning in. I'm sure we've got some everydayers here, the people that never miss an episode. Can't thank you guys enough for continuing to watch this podcast in spite of, maybe even because of, the awful season that the Rangers are having right now. But for anybody that's new, we do this every day. 5 episodes per week, every week, except for, there's a little stretch of the off season where we knock it down to 3 episodes. But for the most part, it's 5 days a week, every single week. We talk about this team from every conceivable angle. And today's obviously a big show. But again, we'll be right back here, with an episode covering whatever happens between the Rangers and the Devils. So if you're new here, definitely give us a like, give us a subscribe, stick around. It's a fun group, a fun little community of Ranger fans, excuse me, that we've created over the years here. It's been a blast. And first of all, like in celebrating the 1500th episode, let me also just say real quick here, I did not plan this. I didn't even realize that this was the case, that episode 1500 would be dropping on trade deadline day until about 2 weeks ago. Because at that point, every Friday ends with a 5 or a 0, right? As far as what number episode it is. And so that's kind of when I realized, like, oh, we're going to get to do a live show on the deadline day, like we always do. And it'll be episode number 1500. So obviously worked out very nice. But let's go ahead and talk about a couple of these minor trades that the Rangers made. I mean, I guess the Othmann trade isn't so minor because, he hasn't played well, but he is a former first-round pick. Let's talk first about the smaller of these 2 trades. We'll do them, in chronological order here today. And that was a trade that was completed between the Rangers and the Blackhawks. The trade was Derek Pouliot for Aiden Thompson. And I saw a report, I forget who had it first. It might have been Elliot Friedman, but somebody, tweeted out today that the Rangers and Blackhawks were working on a trade that involved Derek Pouliot. And for just a second, I forgot he was a member of the Rangers. Like, I saw that tweet go out, and I'm thinking, like, why are we interested in Derek Pouliot, right? Lo and behold, no, he was actually a member of the Hartford Wolfpack. And I remembered that soon after that. But, that'll give you an idea of about the kind of impact that he's had with the Hartford Wolfpack. Just hasn't really done a whole lot. And really, there's no reason for somebody like Derek Pouliot to still be on this Ranger team, even if it is the Wolfpack. And I mean, no disrespect to Pouliot, but this is somebody that's bounced around the league. Penguins, Canucks, Blues, Knights, Kraken, Sharks, Stars, and Lightning, and now also the Wolfpack, along with several other AHL teams. But he has not played a single game in the NHL since the 2023-2024 season. And in the past 5 seasons combined, he's only played a total of 24 games in the NHL. So, he is what he is at this point. He's somebody that is mostly going to be in the AHL. You can call him up on an as-needed basis. If you need just, there's an injury, you just need a veteran to step up, whatever the case might be there. But again, he's 32 years old. He signed with the Rangers this past offseason on a 2-year deal, but there was no reason for him to be here any longer. So they flip him to the Blackhawks in exchange for Aiden Thompson. Aiden Thompson, not a household name, obviously, but he's 24 years old. And honestly, that was all I really needed to see. I mean, we'll talk a little bit more than obviously just his age. But once I saw that we flipped a 32-year-old for a 24-year-old, to me, it's a win. It's a small win. And who's to say what kind of a role Aiden Thompson is going to have with the Rangers if he ever makes a team, if he ever carves out a role with the Rangers. I mean, we could see him later this season, or we might never see him. It's hard to say for sure. But again, that age difference, I mean, you might as well get a little bit younger, even if it is just the exchange of 2 AHL players. Now, as far as Thompson goes, 5'11", 181-pound forward. He was drafted by the Blackhawks in the 3rd round of the 2022 draft at number 90 overall, has not yet made his NHL debut. 44 regular season games with the Rockford Ice Hogs of the AHL, 6 goals, 10 assists, 16 points, and a -9. So obviously underwhelming numbers. But again, I do like the fact that the Rangers got younger here. And this is a player, it's a minor trade, but we'll break down this trade. We'll find a little bit more about Thompson in a future episode of Locked On New York Rangers. I want to move quickly along to the more notable of the 2 trades here, and that was Brennan Othmann being traded to the Calgary Flames in exchange for Jacob Battaglia. And as far as Othmann goes, I mean, you guys mostly know the story. He was the first player that Chris Drury ever took in an NHL draft. He was a first rounder, I believe number 16 overall was Brennan Othmann. And it just has not worked out in any conceivable way, shape, or form. We've seen him get short stints with the Rangers over the last couple of seasons, but it never really seems to go all that well. I mean, he finally scored his first goal this season, and good for him for finally getting that out of the way. I was hopeful that once he got his first goal, maybe the weight of the world kind of falls off of his shoulders, and maybe he starts to relax a little bit, and we see him just play a little bit better hockey and start to contribute offensively a little bit more. Once you get that first one out of the way, whatever hopes I had of that were basically dashed. I mean, we're talking about somebody now that has 1 goal and 2 assists in 40-something games of hockey. I mean, that is just a staggeringly low total for really anybody, but certainly for somebody who you took in the first round and you thought so highly of. And that's another thing too. There were rumors over the years that, Drury would consistently balk at trade offers involving Brennan Othmann. And the Rangers had a 3-year window there, and they had a 3-year run where they were always buyers at the trade deadline. And I understand, you drafted this guy and you have high hopes for him and you don't want to let go of him. But man, I mean, if that was a move that the Rangers could have made, dealing Brennan Othmann and getting somebody significant for them, even as just a rental, for one of these potential Stanley Cup runs, and they didn't do it. I mean, what a miscalculation that was, right? Because now you give him away for just a fellow prospect, a former 2nd rounder in Jacob Battaglia. But, as far as Othmann going to Calgary, I think that's a good landing spot for him as well, because they're not very good. And that obviously means that there should be some jobs up for grabs. I think a team that needs to rebuild in the way that Calgary does, they'll, at least in theory, be more willing to give a look to a young player like Brennan Othmann and maybe even have him play out the rest of the season on the NHL roster. We'll see. I don't know what Calgary's plans are for Othmann, but it would seem like at least there is, there's a door there to playing time for Brennan Othmann in Calgary, and it's up to him to kick it down. But all the best to Brennan Othmann, and I mean, what a freaking disaster, right? I'm sorry. He seems like a good kid. Everybody says that he is, but this is your first round pick and 3 points as a member of the Rangers, and then you basically just give him away. Now, I don't want to completely write off Battaglia here because he's something of an unknown himself. He is 19 years old. And again, this is the player that the Rangers got in exchange for Brennan Othmann. He plays both wings. He is 6'1", 203 pounds, drafted in 2024 in the second round by the Flames. Now, interestingly, he's currently in his 5th season in the OHL. He's with Kingston for 4 years, was an alternate captain in year 3, became the captain in year 4, and now he is in his first season with the Flint Firebirds. His offense, though, has strangely taken a hit over the years. So his second year in the OHL, 65 points in 67 games. Year 3 was his best, 90 points in 68 games. However, year 4, just 27 points in 36 games. And then this most recent year, year 5, his first with Flint, maybe that has something to do with it. Obviously he changed teams, but just 16 points in 22 games. So a curious career progression for this kid in the OHL. And who's to say for sure, exactly the exact reasons for that. I'll do some digging. We'll try to find out more about both Battaglia and Thompson, 2 of the players that the Rangers acquired. We'll find out more about these guys for future episodes. But for the time being, just wanted to go through the trade quickly and, just kind of assess these guys and give you the cliff notes on them. But we'll do deeper dives in future episodes for sure. So on to the celebration here. 1,500 episodes of Locked On New York Rangers. And we're up to 87 comments in the YouTube section there, 88 and counting. So we'll get to some of your comments, some of your questions, and some of your thoughts on this trade deadline here. I'm sure a lot of people had a lot to say about what the Rangers did today, what they didn't do today. But man, first and foremost, I just got to give a massive shout out to everybody who has ever watched this show, listened to this show, told a friend about this show. Maybe there's people, well, there are people that have appeared as guests on this show. I got to give a shout out to the other Locked On NHL hosts. They all do an awesome job. It's such a fun team to be a part of. We've done crossover episodes with some of them. Those are always some of my favorite episodes. And, it's just been a lot of fun. I mean, it's more fun when the Rangers are winning, obviously, but something I thought of while kind of like setting up this episode and everything, 7 seasons now of Locked On New York Rangers, right? And again, we've seen a lot. We've seen a lot of players come and go. We've seen a lot of ups and downs here. Has there ever been in Ranger history, though, I challenge anybody to come up with a 7-year stretch that has been more up and down than what we've seen here? Think about it. Years 1 and 2 of this 7-year stretch, the Rangers were rebuilding, and they weren't very good, but they were very young. They were trying to put the pieces back together. Fans would get frustrated at times, but there was a certain buzz, a certain excitement around this team, and the fact that they are trying to construct, a long-term winner. Then we get a 3-year window where the Stanley Cup championship window basically swings open sooner than a lot of us thought that it would. They're in the Eastern Conference Final in a season where everybody still thought they were rebuilding, and nobody even thought that they would make the playoffs, and they're coming from behind, down 3-1 against the Penguins, and comebacks in games 5 and 6, and the Panarin winner in game 7. And then, again, sustained success for 3 seasons. And then 2 years ago, that was their best chance at it. And it's unfortunate, obviously, that they couldn't complete the run, but we obviously, all of us had a lot of fun together as Ranger fans and, as part of this podcast community here, going through that journey together. That was a blast. And now we're into this era of Ranger hockey that I don't even know what it is. I don't even know what to call it. I think the best name for it is the rebuild denial era, because the Rangers need to rebuild. And they might realize that deep down, although considering their lack of moves today, maybe they don't realize that deep down. But they're denying their rebuild, and they think that they can retool. To me, the retooling began at the start of last season, and it has been nothing short of an absolute disaster. But all these fun moments, multiple outdoor games with the Rangers. We mentioned the Panarin Game 7 winner. That was amazing. Moments like the kid line shift in the 2022 conference final. We thought everything was set up perfectly for this Ranger team. We thought everything was set up perfectly for both the short term and the long term. And you fast forward a couple of years and everything crumbles. The Chris Kreider, the natural hat trick that he had, the defining performance of his long Ranger career, the natural hat trick against the Canes, saving the day in game 6. All the overtime playoff wins that we saw in 2024, that was a blast. The Mika Zibanejad 5-goal game, everything was Sam Rosen saying goodbye to him as the long-term Ranger announcer, and Joe Micheletti too. Henrik Lundqvist, that'll really give you an idea of how long we've been doing this, because it feels like he's been gone for a while, and he has, but when we started this podcast, man, Henrik Lundqvist was still on this team, and Igor Shesterkin had not yet debuted. So it's been a minute, but we had the opportunity to, obviously pay homage and give him his props all throughout his final season, what turned out to be his final season as an NHL player. So again, big shout out to everybody. Cannot even imagine what this show would be without you guys. It really does mean a lot. And one more thing that I'll mention here real quick. My wife and I are going to be attending Tuesday's game against the Calgary Flames. So it's a bad team playing another bad team, which means there's actually a chance the Rangers could win this and score some goals. And again, to be completely fair, they have looked a little bit better. The Rangers have after the trade deadline. That's a very low bar, but they have looked a little bit better since, whatever they were doing going into the Olympic break. I don't know why I said the trade deadline. I've got the trade deadline on my mind. I obviously meant the Olympic break. But if anybody's going to be at that game, would love to meet you guys. As I mentioned earlier, I am now on the Locked On Rangers Discord server, so feel free to connect in there. I'll keep you guys posted on where I'm at and all that good stuff. Section 211, so we'll see how those seats look when we get there. But definitely join the Discord server, and we can talk about it in there. Maybe do a quick meetup before the game. We will see. With all that said, let's go ahead and turn the show over to you guys. Again, there's a lot of comments here. Don't know that I'll be able to get to all of them, but we'll see what we can do here. And obviously, again, a spirited episode here today. There's a lot of, emotions are running high. A lot of people, some people may be happy with what the Rangers did today. A lot of people, myself included, feeling very underwhelmed. So we'll get to some of the comments here, and we're trying to get to the top of this list here. And we got Shine On, who says, this is crazy. It looks like maybe they are rethinking it and holding on to Trocheck. Yeah, I mean, I think the most likely thing that probably happened here is what we were talking about earlier in the episode, that they just didn't get an offer that was to their liking. I mean, I can't think for a second that they decided at the very end here that Vincent Trocheck is completely off limits, right? I mean, he was the best guy available. They should have been able to get a haul for him. They weren't able to do it. I think, to me, it just comes down to, okay, we're not getting what we want. We're not getting really all that close to what we want, so we're going to hang on to him. We've got Joe here, who says, if the offers were not good, Drury did the correct move, end of story. Yeah, look, I mean, it depends on the offers. If the offers were truly wretched and just absolutely brutal, then yes, hang on to Vincent Trocheck. But if you had a first rounder and a big time prospect, maybe somebody that was drafted in the first round, if you had that offer on the table and you balked at it, to me, that's a mistake, because like we were saying earlier in this episode, I don't think Vincent Trocheck sees the other side of this rebuild. And honestly, I think the odds are against Vincent Trocheck ever playing in another playoff game for the Rangers. It's not impossible. Never say never. Maybe they surprise us next year and they're right back in the playoffs. I don't think that'll happen, but crazier things have happened. There's surprises every year, right? There's very surprising teams in the NHL, and there's very disappointing teams in the NHL. And in a perfect world, maybe the Rangers can get back on their horse, next season. We will see. Larry says, in a perfect world, Trocheck would have never been on the block, but we are handcuffed to the gills with too many no-move clauses with guys that could bring us retooling type assets. So a lot of you seem happy he's staying, but now I ask, what now then? Yeah, I mean, the no-move clauses don't hurt. I don't think, they don't help. I don't think that that's really exclusive to the Rangers, though. You look around, you go to Puckpedia, you look at these rosters, everybody's got a full no-move clause or a partial no-move clause or a 16-team list, and then it goes down to 12 teams, whatever it might be. It feels like just about everybody has that worked into their contract. And sometimes you do that to save some money and stay under the cap space. You give them a no trade or a full no move, and they'll take a little bit less money. Larry also adds, Trocheck needed to be moved 100%. There had to be some middle ground where we didn't get fleeced, but the return was fine. Drury's price was probably stupid high, and all that did was handcuff us more. That's possible. I mean, look, it's possible Drury completely overplayed his hand here, and he thought he was going to get 2 first-rounders and a second-rounder and a prospect or 2. Like that's going a little bit overboard. Even with Vincent Trocheck being such a good player, being the top guy available, I mean, there is a certain limit. At a certain point, teams are not going to go any higher. They're just not. And so, maybe Drury did overplay his hand, but we're going to see. I'm sure some reports will come out about that, in the coming days here. Couple more comments here. Peter says, this GM is pathetic. I know he's not the only one that feels that way. John says, with so few moves, it seemed like the entire league did not want to give up much. Yeah, this is not going to go down as an all-time NHL trade deadline. I think that is for sure. It's not going to go down as a all-time deadline really in any sport. I mean, you look around the league today, Carlson got dealt. That was a pretty significant move. I guess Corey Perry, as old as he is still a somewhat effective player, and now the Lightning can lose in the Stanley Cup final. But yeah, I mean, there wasn't a whole lot of like blockbuster, big time moves being made today. There were a couple others that were noteworthy, but yeah, certainly not an all timer. Certainly not an all timer. NYR for life says, I can't believe I'm saying this, but good on Drury for not trading Trocheck. If the offer was not good enough, then don't take it. Yeah, that's going to be, we're going to have to find out. We're going to have to find out what these offers were, and hopefully we do in due time. Ian says, I mean, holding on to a guy when you don't get the offer you need is good. People would go nuts if Trocheck went for a bag of pucks. I don't think he would have gone for a bag of pucks, though. I think there had to have been at least a good offer, right? Again, it's hard for me to sit here and say for sure because I don't know what the offers were. Let's go on social media right now, actually, and let's have a quick gander here and see if there's anything about Vincent Trocheck and what these offers were for him. Let's just type in Trocheck and see what comes up. And you always got to be careful on social media around this time because there's people that like do parody accounts and they just make up trades. You don't want to fall for those, but let's see here. Well, Molly Walker tweeted this out. This is pretty funny. She said, so the winner of the Rangers trade deadline is Leo Trocheck. Yeah, Leo is Vincent's son. And if you guys remember, he said to Vincent, his dad, that, Vincent Trocheck was obviously telling his son that he might be traded. And his son told him, well, I'm not getting traded, so I'll stay here and continue playing on my team. And look, there's a human aspect to this as well. Vincent Trocheck, during his interviews, did not strike me as somebody that really wanted to be traded. He recognized that it could happen, and I think he was okay with it, but I don't think he wanted to move. And look, I mean, great. Look, his son gets to finish his hockey season. He's got 2 kids, is my understanding. They both get to finish their school years. They know that they're not going to have to go anywhere for at least the next couple of months. The one downside for them, I guess, is that once the season ends and the new league calendar starts, he can be traded all over again. But for the time being, at least they get to stick around. Let me just look at the latest on Vincent Trocheck here, see if anybody's saying anything. Yeah, I don't think there's anything definitive here in terms of like what he could have, what the offers were for Vincent Trocheck. But we'll keep an eye on it moving forward here. Let's go ahead and get back to a couple of your comments as well. Mr. Mighty Frog, great username, by the way, says, Drury is such a bad GM that he couldn't negotiate a deal for the top asset on the market. This isn't even a retool. That's kind of where I'm at. But again, and I know I keep saying this, but if we were going to be completely fair here, we have to find out, or hopefully we'll find out eventually what the offers were. If we find out that a team had like a really good offer for Trocheck and he still balked at it, then I think that's a problem. If we find out that nobody wanted to offer him more than like a second rounder, then I understand him telling them to get lost. So we'll see. Preston says, tough to say, yeah, but yeah, if the price isn't there, keep him. That's not to say I still don't hate Drury. Well, at this point, I mean, Drury's past the point of no return for a lot of Ranger fans. I mean, he's messed up so many things in the past 2 years here after a decent start as Ranger GM that there's no going back. And there's a lot of people that are never going to trust him. They're never going to throw their support behind him. Even if he makes a good trade, even if he makes a good free agent signing, there's people that just are not going to trust this guy going forward. And I can certainly understand that. We've got John here. He's talking about Gavin McKenna. Love Gavin, Penn State alum, but would the Rangers let him play on the top line right away or ruin him? That's a good question. I think, so here's what I would do. And I know there's some rules about joining the AHL, but I think you can find a way if you're the Rangers to get him a handful of games with the Hartford Wolfpack. You don't have to go nuts with it. I don't think he needs to be there longer than like 15, 20, 25 games. But I do like the idea of him getting that as kind of a bridge. We said the same thing about Gabe Perreault this offseason as well. I know Perreault debuted last season, but want him to get a handful of games with the Wolfpack. He did. I believe it was 20. I like the AHL as a bridge between, in McKenna's case, college and the NHL. Because that's quite the jump. And I know McKenna's like this phenom and everything, and he could go number 1 overall, and we'll see. But I do like the idea of him getting some time with the Wolfpack. However, once he does then get promoted to the Rangers, he must be in a top 6 role. No exceptions, no excuses. Have you seen this roster lately? We've got Taylor Radish on the second line last night, and Johnny Brodzinski too. And nothing against either one of those guys, but like, who do the Rangers have right now that would possibly prevent, McKenna from playing in their top 6 and possibly their top line? But top 6, I'll live with that. Hopefully, a spot on the top power play as well. Boxing Fan says not trading anybody today was a big mistake. I mean, they traded Othmann, but I get what you're saying. I mean, they didn't make the moves that I think a lot of us were looking for them to make. Brooklyn Luke says rebuild the front office. Unfortunately, I don't think they're going to do that. Twin Fantino says Drury is gun shy now. He lost on the Panarin deal, and the fans are drilling him for it. He likely didn't want to add salt to the wound by letting Trocheck go for nothing. I get that too. If it truly was a situation where they were going to have to trade him for nothing, then I get him not doing it. But you can't tell me there wasn't somebody willing to give you something significant for Vincent Trocheck. Who else we got here? I want to try to mix up the names here. A lot of people left a lot of different comments, and that's cool. Keep the comments rolling here. Always fun talking with you guys during these live shows. We got to do some more live shows moving forward for sure. Bluesman16 says, I won't support this team again until Drury is gone. Yeah, you will. Yeah, you will. We all say this. We all say, I'm done with this team. I'm done with the Rangers. I'm going to find a new team. I'm not going to come back until A, B, and C happens, right? You will support this team. I'm not saying you're going to watch them every single night like I have to, right? And I understand that too. But you'll always be a Ranger fan. There's no quitting the New York Rangers. We're Ranger fans, and we don't know how to quit. Johnny Red says, in my 63 years of following this team, I didn't think things could get any worse, but thanks to Drury, it has. Yeah, man, Drury, these last 2 years, man, this is like an all-time bad 2-year run for really any GM, not just in hockey, but just about any professional sport. I mean, show me a GM in any kind of recent history. Doesn't have to be hockey, doesn't have to be the Rangers, any sport, where a GM has taken a team that had the best record in the league and turned them into what we're seeing now. Have them miss the playoffs the next 2 years, destroy the culture, destroy the vibes. And I'm not saying the players are blameless, because they're not. Sooner or later, the players have to get over the fact that Barclay Goodrow got waived, and they got to move on and pick their heads up and start playing hockey. So let me say that too. But you have a GM here who had a team that the best record in the NHL, deep playoff run, and they're a complete disaster. That's where things stand right now. Preston says 1,500. Love and thanks, Chick. Thank you, Preston. Thanks to all of you. Don't thank me. Thanks to all of you. Again, when I started this show, I had no idea if anybody was going to watch it, listen to it, whatever it might be. But we're fortunate enough that some people tune in and some people listen, and that's obviously been awesome. And I've obviously gotten to interact with a bunch of you guys over the years as well. So it's been a blast. And here's to the next 1,500. Larry says, McKenna is a generational talent. He's not a player like Laffy at number 1. These types don't come around regularly, so it would be impossible for the Rangers to ruin McKenna. He would beat the doors down and be fine. Well, never say never. Never say never. This is the Rangers we're dealing with. Lafreniere, I don't know that he was labeled like a generational talent, but he was thought of very highly. And all first overall picks are going to be. But I think even among first overall picks, people thought that he was one of the better ones. And you guys see the result. And he's actually played a little bit better recently too. But I mean, this guy, Lafreniere, has fallen light years shy of whatever expectations come with being the first overall pick. Fabrizio says, I am happy they didn't trade Trocheck. They should trade Miller. He is always hurt. Well, they can't trade Miller because he's got the full no move clause. And I mean, they just named him captain. Not that that in and of itself prevents you from trading a player, but I mean, you think this team looks dysfunctional now. How about naming a guy captain and then trading him less than a year later? That's not going to happen. You know, he's got the full no move clause for next year as well. After that, you know, maybe it's a conversation to be had. We will see, but that's not going to be happening anytime soon. See who else we got here. Andy says Scott Lawton is 3 years younger than Carrick. That's true, and that's a fair point to make. But again, I don't think that comparing those two is like completely unfair. I mean, if Lawton can get a first rounder, then Carrick can get you a second rounder, right? I'm not saying that Carrick has to get you a first rounder. You know, Lawton probably is, as you mentioned, he is a little bit younger, and you know he probably does have a little bit better of an all-around game. There's more scoring to Lawton's game to be sure, but if he gets you a first rounder, and I think there was another pick involved in that as well, then Carrick should get you a second rounder. How's everybody doing out there? How's everybody feeling? This has been quite a day. This has been quite a season. This has been quite a trade deadline lead up and ultimately a whole lot of nothing on trade deadline day. See who else we got here. Mikey says, Drury will extend Trocheck and Schneider in the offseason. Well, he's not going to extend Trocheck. I mean, Trocheck's under contract for another 3 years. And when his contract ends, he will turn 36 before the following season. So, I mean, I can't imagine any scenario where Trocheck gets another contract with the Rangers. I mean, I guess never say never, but man, I'm putting that at like maybe 1%. So there's no reason to extend him. Now, Schneider, that could happen. He's a restricted free agent with arbitration rights, like we mentioned earlier. And 2 years from now, he will be an unrestricted free agent. So you could sign him. I mean, he's still young. You could give him a long-term contract. That would be a way to keep the average annual value down and hopefully maybe not have maybe just eliminate the need to include a full no move clause on his contract. Give him an 8-team no trade list and call it a day. 8 teams is fine. You can work your way around that for sure. But again, you know, Schneider, I'm torn, man. And we'll talk about this going forward because he's young enough and a solid enough player where keeping him around could make some sense. You need some stability on your team, right? I mean, you can't literally trade everybody, even though I know that the way these last 2 seasons have gone, a lot of people probably want to do exactly that. But yeah, I mean, could be a sign and trade too. I mean, they did that with K'Andre Miller this past offseason. K'Andre technically re-signed with the Rangers, but they obviously had the deal in place with the Canes, and they knew that they were going to put that deal through as soon as the contract was signed. You could see something similar with Brennan Schneider. That's at least possible. I think they'll be open for business on Schneider, but if they don't get the kind of offer that they're looking for, as they clearly didn't at trade deadline season this year, then you could see him stick around with the Rangers for a while because he's young enough that you know that would make some sense to do that. Mikey says Rangers aren't retooling; they are self-destructing. Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much. Carol says, in all fairness, maybe the trade offers were underwhelming. The offer from Minnesota was certainly that. I was hoping for a deal with Detroit. They have some really good assets. Yeah, Detroit would have been, I think, one of the more ideal teams. I think Boston as well. They have some good assets. I was going to throw the Sharks out there, but we know that Vincent Trocheck has the 12-team no trade list, and he himself said that it's a bunch of Western teams that are on that list. So the Sharks were very possibly one of them. Maybe the Caps. Although no, not the Caps because they sold today. They trade Carlson away, so that wasn't going to happen. I saw some steam picking up that maybe the Canes were interested, and then they dropped out. That would have been interesting for sure. We've got Peach here who says pretty happy with the Othmann and Pouliot trades. Yeah, I mean the one with Pouliot I think certainly makes sense. I think that's a small win for the Rangers today because again, you go from trading a 23-year-old defenseman to a 24-year-old forward. And if you're a rebuilding team, that's really all I need to hear. I mean, they're both AHLers, so get younger and move forward. The Othmann trade, I mean, again, we got to do some more digging on Battaglia. I want to learn a little bit more about him. But, Othmann, it just wasn't working in any way, shape, or form. The Rangers never really gave him a chance. And what little chances he had, he obviously wasn't able to take advantage of it. So he was somebody that I think was badly in need of a change of scenery. And like I said earlier, all the best to Brennan Othmann moving forward. Larry says, I was 20 when the Rangers won in 94. I feel for you younger peeps here who haven't seen the glory yet, and I want another one bad before I die. Oh, my God. That is morbid. Yeah, I mean, look, man, nothing is promised to any of us, and I do feel for the Ranger fans who are, so young that they weren't even born when the Rangers won it in 94, or maybe you were born, but you were like, a couple of years old and you didn't really get to experience it. I've talked about this before on the podcast. I was 7 years old when the Rangers won the Stanley Cup in 94. So just old enough to watch it. That face-off with 1.6 seconds, that is burned in my memory forever in Game 7 against the Canucks when they finally, wrapped it up there and won Game 7 and won the Stanley Cup. So I certainly remember it. The thing I regret, though, I don't really regret it. I was 7 years old. Like what are you going to do, right? But the thing that I just wish that I could have done more at that age was to really soak it in and really absorb it and really understand just how special it really is. Because they won the Stanley Cup, and that was the first year I was really watching them. And it was just kind of like, yeah, they got a great team, and they're just going to do this every single season. Well, 32 years later, they haven't done it since. And we know it was 54 years, from 1940 to 1994. So, yeah, championships are few and far between. And Larry and everybody else, no matter how old, how young you might be, I do hope all of us get to see this at least one more time, at some point. A little morbid, but you're not wrong, dude. So I can't, I can't say anything negative about it. That's for sure. I hope that everybody gets to see a Rangers Stanley Cup. Don't think it's going to happen in the near future, but hopefully the future at some point. Let's see what else we got here. Trying to mix it up a little bit here. Dethrone 55 says, glad Schneider stays about it. Yeah, look, to me with Schneider, like we've been saying, it all comes down to the return. I think he's somebody that can still be a building block for this Ranger team moving forward. You can't go completely overboard in how much you're paying him every year. Although the Rangers are going to have a ton of cap space this offseason and nowhere really to spend it. You combine that with the fact that the cap is rising and rising and rising every season. And, I don't think there's too much harm in giving Schneider a contract extension. But if you can get a first rounder for him or a first rounder plus something else, I think you probably do that. It's a tough call. It's a coin toss for me with Schneider. New York Ranger fan says, we're going to waste back-to-back Hall of Fame goalies, aren't we? It looks that way. It really looks that way. Henrik Lundqvist was here for 15 seasons. No Stanley Cups. At least made it to the Cup final the 1 year. That was nice, but they lost. Igor Shesterkin, all right, so let's do some math here. I'm actually curious about this now. Bear with me for just a second. Igor Shesterkin right now. Wow, okay, so year 7 for Igor Shesterkin is this year, and he's 30 years old. And there's 7 more years left on his deal after this one, right? Because he signed the extension last year. It was an 8-year extension. This is year 1 of that extension. So 7 more years with Igor to go with the 7 that he's already played. That's 14 seasons if he plays out the whole thing with the Rangers. And Lundqvist had 15. So nearly 3 decades, 29 seasons of elite Hall of Fame goalie play and potentially not a single Stanley Cup to show for it. Wow. Man, listen to a statement like that and tell me you don't want to walk into the ocean, right? Don't really do that. I'm just joking. But yeah, that's brutal. And look, never say never. Look, Igor's under contract for a while. If the Rangers can put this thing back together, I realize that's wishful thinking and whatnot, but he's still here, right? And he still is an elite goalie. And, maybe it can happen at some point. We will see. We've gotten a couple comments from Mikey, but Mikey's on a roll here today. I got to read this one too. Fox should tell Dolan it is him or Drury. Can you imagine a player doing that? To be fair, Dolan might, if Adam Fox were to go up to James Dolan, go into his office and tell him it's me or Drury, Dolan might say, who are you? That's at least possible. He'd probably recognize Adam Fox. I'll give him that. I don't think he knows too much about the Taylor Radishes of the world, but he probably at least knows Adam Fox. I think he would recognize Adam Fox. I hope so, at least. Peach says it sucked that nobody traded for Schneider. Depends how you look at it. I mean, again, he's not somebody that you just give away. And like I said, I'm really 50-50 on him, whether to deal him or stick around. Have him stick around. Peach says, why didn't we claim Alex Holtz, former 7th overall? Yeah, I saw he was on waivers. Now, has he gone through the process yet? Somebody's got to let me know. I was so fixated on what the Rangers were doing today with all the trades, and I'm not sure. I know he got waived, but I'm just not sure if he's gone through the whole process now, if somebody claimed him or not, or if he's still on waivers and you can make a claim if you'd like to make a claim. Yeah, I'm not seeing anything definitive here. Did that just happen? Somebody in the chat's going to have to let me know, because like I said, we'll scroll down to the bottom here real quick and see if anybody's talking about that. Okay, Nicole. Thank you, Nicole. Nicole says, yes, he cleared. It probably would have been worth a flyer. I mean, if you're going to make waiver claims for I don't know what his contract looks like off the top of my head. So if it's anything expensive, then maybe you don't want to do it for that reason. But, yeah, I mean, the Rangers are going out there and they're claiming Cartier and Iorio. You would think that somebody that was taken top 10 overall, that would be of interest to them. But obviously they did not do that. But neither did anybody else. So that might give you an idea of where he's at right now. Another comment here from Nicole. I just don't know that the offers are going to be much different in the summer. Are we just overvaluing what other teams believe Trocheck is worth? If anything, I think the offers in the summer are going to be worse because, again, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. You lose in the summer, if you're the Rangers, that buyer-seller dynamic that exists at every trade deadline, right? The summer, I mean, everybody is 0-0, right? And look, some teams are at different spots than other teams. Certain teams are still in a rebuild. Certain teams are looking to contend next season. But the season hasn't begun. Right now, we're in the middle of a season. We're toward the end of a season, and teams have established what they are. And so, that being the case, the Rangers are obviously sellers, or they should be sellers. Get a buyer to give you a big offer for Vincent Trocheck. Now, the other part of Nicole's question here, are we just overvaluing what other teams believe Trocheck is worth? It's possible, but the one thing that I don't think is, I mean, you can always debate it, but I don't think it really is up for debate. When you look at the players that were potentially available at the deadline, today, yesterday, the days leading up to the NHL trade deadline, Trocheck was head and shoulders the best. And so in theory, that should give the Rangers a lot of leverage. But it did seem like a lot of teams are very hesitant to make moves today, to really give up assets. There's contending teams that didn't do a thing today. That's a tough sell for the fan bases. And we've got on Drury in the past for certain things that he's done at the deadline. 2024 was a little bit rough because the only things they did, they added Wenberg, they added Rosovic, and the defenseman from the Penguins, what's it? Ruhwedel, and he only played 5 games with the Rangers. So that was an underwhelming deadline, but at least he did something. He did make the team a little bit better, marginally better, but he made them a little bit better. I mean, you'll take that over not doing anything, which is exactly what certain teams did today that are contending, and that's a tough sell to the fan base for sure. LGF says, did not think the Rangers could outdo the Giants, a centennial year putrid performance, but they sure gave it a go. I mean, in terms of winning percentage, the Rangers have the Giants beat, but that's only because there's far fewer games in the NFL. I mean, yeah, the Giants were terrible. I don't know. That's kind of a toss-up. It really is. I mean, at least the Giants, the Giants at least have some exciting young players, and they hired Harbaugh, right? I don't follow the NFL as closely as I used to, but they hired Harbaugh. There's certain reasons for optimism with the Giants, whereas with the Rangers, I mean, if you dig deep enough, you can find certain things to be excited about. Gabe Perreault is starting to look like a player, and I think we all are happy about that. Liam Greentree's on fire. Who's to know how he's going to do in the NHL, but that's starting to look a little bit better. Igor's still Igor. Fox is still Fox. Mika's had a bounce-back season. If you look closely enough, there are things you can like about this Ranger team, but they are just light years away from what this team was just 2 years ago. Larry again, go look at all the names that were drafted after Elias Anderson in 2017. Tells you all you need to know about this franchise and how clueless. I assume he's meant to say, he got cut off there, but how clueless they are. Yeah, it's been bad. Maybe that's another reason, even subconsciously, why I want the Rangers to hang on to Brennan Schneider, because even though he's not a superstar player, he's something of a first-round success story. I mean, he was drafted in the 20s, right? It's not like he's like a top 3 overall pick, and we're expecting superstardom. And again, he's not a superstar, but he's been a solid, steady contributing member of this Ranger team. He's been here for a lot of really good seasons, some deep playoff runs. Just the fact that they got anything good out of a first-round pick is a major win for this team, because they don't usually do that. J.R. Wilson says they blew it by not ditching Lafreniere. Drury needs to be fired. You know, Lafreniere, I get what you're saying. I'm not sure you can give him away right now, though. Maybe you could. It's possible. But he's under contract for so long, at more than $7 million per season, that I just don't see teams lining up to take on that contract. Would you want your team to do it? You know, if you're a fan of, like, you know, one of the good teams that we mentioned earlier, the Knights, the Avalanche, the Canes, is Lafreniere the guy that you're looking for them to bring in right now? I don't know about that. Liam says, I don't know what the point of the letter was if they didn't do much. Did Drury really write this letter just to trade Panarin? I guess. I don't know. I mean, who knows what goes on in Chris Drury's head? Yeah, I mean, that's the other thing, too, like with Panarin, like, and we've talked about this in the past, too, but if all it was going to take was 2 years at $11 million per season, and you really are retooling as opposed to rebuilding, and you're going to keep Vincent Trocheck, then why? And this question is even more relevant after they didn't trade Trocheck today. Then why get rid of Panarin at all? If it really is a rebuild, and if you're not going to trade his line mate, Vincent Trocheck. And they could still trade Trocheck in the offseason. That's entirely possible, but I don't know that they're going to like the returns any better then than they do now. And frankly, I think they're going to like them even less. Well, that's a lot of letters. I don't know how to pronounce that. We'll say Al here. Do the Rangers spend big this offseason, or do they wait for McDavid in 2 years? I don't think for a second that Connor McDavid is coming to the Rangers. Never say never. Anything is possible. But when you look at what this Ranger team is right now, I just don't see him wanting to take on a challenge like that, where he's trying to basically lift this team out of the muck, you know? I mean, if you're Connor McDavid, you could pretty much go anywhere you want. You're going to come to the Rangers right now? And things could change a little bit in 2 years. That's at least possible. The other question about McDavid that I have, and this is more of like an NHL question as opposed to just a Ranger question, is it more likely that he stays with Edmonton if they win a cup, or is it more likely that he stays with them if they don't win a cup? Like, if he wins a cup, does he feel like, okay, mission accomplished, my business here is finished, I'm going to go somewhere else? Or if he doesn't win a cup, does that make him want to stay and get the job done there with Edmonton? It's a question only he knows the answer to, and maybe he doesn't even know the answer. Maybe he's going to cross that bridge when he gets to it. I don't see Connor McDavid signing with the Rangers. I think for sure the Rangers will make a play if he does hit free agency. But I don't see it happening. I'm sorry. I know it's exciting to think about, and, you know, that feels like an off-season episode. We'll talk about that in greater detail if that's at least possible. But right now, I just don't see it. All right, I think we can pretty much wrap this up. We'll do a couple more. Nicole here says, anyone else concerned they will win too many games with Fox, Igor, and Trocheck and fall out of the bottom 6 and end up drafting like 10th overall? That is entirely possible because they are a better team with Vincent Trocheck in the lineup and not being traded. They are a better team with, obviously, Igor and Fox back in the lineup as well. I hope they don't win that many. Like, it's tough because I'm kind of torn between wanting this team to win some games and reestablish a better culture and get used to winning and build the vibes back up and try to build on a strong finish this year for next year and beyond. By that same token, like even if they do finish strong this year, I don't count on them contending for the Stanley Cup next season. You know what I mean? So maybe it's better if they just lose. It's a tough call. I think most people would want them to lose and just tank and get as best of a draft pick as you possibly can. I mean, I don't think they'll end up all the way back at 10th, but they could fall from like 4th right now to like 7th or 8th, maybe. And that, I mean, you might miss out on a player that you really want if that's the case. So it's a tough call. "15 years" says, not a Jury fan, but he did not lose on that Panarin deal. That's to be determined. It is. I think the initial reaction, though, from a lot of us, and I'll stand by this, is that was an underwhelming return. Now, could Liam Greentree be an absolute superstar? Anything's possible. And if he does, we'll look back on this trade and we'll feel a heck of a lot better about it as a fan base. That is for sure. And they have a 3rd-round pick there, too. Maybe they can make that count for something as well, but we will see. Okay, there's some bad language. I'm going to try to remind everybody to keep it PG in the comment section if possible. We are a family show here after all. Rangers fan from Ireland. John, let's go Rangers through thick and thin. You know it, brother. You know it. There's no quitting this team. Not for any of us. Okay. J.R. Wilson is not a fan of Chris Drury. The letter was a drunken text from Hot Pizza Boy. You said it, not me. Dirk says, I have a solution. Fire Drury. He is responsible for this mess. I boycott all games until Drury goes. Mr. Pops Freshenmeyer says, what did Othmann bring back? He brought back Jacob Battaglia, a former second rounder from the Calgary Flames. We're going to find out a little bit more about him in future episodes, but it could be like a dual change of scenery kind of situation there. One of those trades. All right, I think we'll call it. We'll scroll down to the very bottom here. Yeah, so again, thank you guys as always for tuning in, for supporting this podcast. If you're new here, again, 5 episodes every week, new episode every day. We went really long here today because we had to. It was the trade deadline. It was our 1500th episode. So this is always going to be a long one. 99% of episodes are between like 25 and like 33 minutes, somewhere in that ballpark. And there is one every day. So if you're new here, thank you for joining. Make sure to like it. Make sure to subscribe to this channel. And if you're watching or listening to Locked On New York Rangers for the first time, then, or rather, if you've been here as an everydayer, then thank you guys so much, because it does mean a lot that you guys support this podcast the way that you do, even when the Rangers are an absolute dumpster fire. So with that thought, we'll call it. If you guys would like to get in touch with this podcast, please send an email to lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Once again, that is lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Definitely give us a follow on Twitter as well, @jchick17. Once again, @jchik17, and definitely subscribe to Locked On New York Rangers YouTube channel. Thanks again, guys. I will see you next time.